All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to GEG Alaska's Gin and Jams, inspired by Snoop Dogg himself and the Google Educators of Alaska. We're so glad you're here joining us tonight. We are just going to talk about some of the awesome things that you can do with Jamboard. So to start, first want to introduce the team. So when I call your name, just wave. So first me, Chelsea Hurst. I work for YKSD. We have Allison Curry in Fairbanks. Tammy, who is in several groups, so she can't join us today, but she's usually with us. Laura Davies out in Wrangell. Tana Martin in Fairbanks, and then Nikki Fisher in Fairbanks as well. So we are excited to go ahead and get started.
Well, that looks like me. I think I made this slide. Yes. Hello, my name is Allison Curry. I am a Google for Education certified trainer since 2016. And I'm going to show you a couple ways, that I use Jamboard. I am a teacher, a real teacher that works with real human children every day. And I teach 7th and 8th grade. And I also help my building learn as well. And so here's the way I use Jamboard. So I do a lot of professional development during the school year and in the summertime, as Nikki will tell you. And one of the best ways to use Jamboard is just as a way to get a group communicating quickly. And so a Jamboard is simple, and that's what makes it beautiful, is there's not a lot of bells and whistles. It's just what you see. There's very few tools. And a Jamboard can have up to 20 frames, and you can make these ahead of time so that when you deploy them on a group, they already have something to work with. And it's just a beautiful thing. So we'll go to the next slide. So, oh, thank you. So another way that I use Jamboards for professional development, one of the things that, one of the barriers people struggle with is, how do I get these boards out to people to use, right? It's one thing to make them, but how do I sit in a room full of adults and then say, hey, go do this thing? Well, I use a great tool called Yelki, which is just like a bit.ly, but it puts a real word at the end of the link and not some random characters. So I might turn the URL to the Jamboard in edit mode, of course, and I just type it into Yelki. You can get there just by going to yelki.com. And it's a timed URL, so you can go up to 24 hours. So I might say 6 hours, and people just go to yelki.com/ t-shirt or something like that, and it takes them right to my Jamboard. What I don't want is, I don't want to have to stop my presentation for people to say, I didn't see that, or can you put the link up again? So I just put the Yelki out there. It's on every one of my slides, and people can get there quickly. And people really do participate when there's not that barrier there. So that's just my little tip and trick tonight. Moving on to the way I use it with students. So I teach middle school. I use Jamboard a lot, usually giving middle schoolers a Jamboard to work inside of. So here is a Jamboard we do with 0 pairs, which is how we teach negative numbers with rational numbers in middle school. So I might give this board to students to do on their own, and I can also use it in a meeting, because I teach remotely, so I have to be able to show this stuff, and Jamboard makes it easy for me to either assign this or do it live in my own class. And next one. And this last slide, I know there's a lot going on, but I just wanted to make sure I showed everything. So at the top left, I have my conference board. So every week my students check the board to see whether I need to conference with them that week or not. So sometimes students have the choice and they can sign up to conference with me. And then there's some weeks where you have to conference with me. On the bottom left, I use them as change my minds, where I might put a statement up and say, obviously I put here cereal is a soup, and then students have to try to change my mind. And then I put my sticky note on one side, but I do it after the kids. And so they have to convince me that cereal is a soup or not a soup. I said that it is. and that made them all mad. And so they had to then convince me. So it's super easy. And then the top right, I use it in English language arts. I teach all subjects. So here we read a short story together, and I had my students get in and talk about what were the things that relate to our essential question based on what we read in the story. So they can add pictures, they can draw, they can add sticky notes, and they each kind of take up their own little space, and then we go talk about it. And it's just super authentic, and I love it. And at the bottom right, I do would you rathers every morning. So this one was, would you rather be buried up to the neck in snow with a swimsuit on, or would you rather be buried up to the neck in sand wearing a snowsuit? And you can see my students would rather sweat themselves to death. I can't understand it, but I did not choose that one. But that is how I use Jamboards. I use them every single day. They are endless. The only limit is just your imagination, and kids and adults love them. So I will pass it on to our next speaker.
Hello, that's me. I think I might have said, let's talk about Jamboard, thinking about like all the experts in the group and not really that I was going to be sharing. So I come at it from a newbie perspective, which I think is valuable because Jamboard is so awesome that you can do it on the fly. So one of my favorite things is, sorry, I've got a dog wrestling behind me, so that's also a joy. But anyways, is to ask a question like, why is science important? So I did this at the beginning of the year when I was introducing, like, why are we even in science class? And the kids came up with all these awesome answers. We talked about why science was important for so long based on their feedback. So amplifies their voice, but it totally took my lesson in a different direction. It took no prep. I think I came up with this on the spot, and things and kids were raising their hand and talking about why they put something up there. And this is like the first week. I just moved into the middle school. I taught them when they were in 5th grade, and they're like, we're grown now. We don't put our hands up. And so it was really awesome to see that they were willing to participate, but it's because they had this to go off of. So it's a great way to get them going. And we can go to the next slide. Okay, so I have a student teacher this year, and this is her lesson, but I loved this example because she was doing a lesson on tides. And she came to me with this lesson idea, and I was like, this is like going to really challenge them. Like, I wouldn't even do this right now, but you go at it. And I swear the reason the lesson was successful was because of the Jamboard. She had every kid illustrate their answer. And you can see that one student used words. There's obviously many more slides in this on the Jamboard, or whatever you call them. But you have different variations. And then she went through each one and discussed, like, how did you get this? Why is this correct? How is this close? And it was this wonderful lesson that I thought the topic was way too hard for that time of year after COVID, but they really got it, and they got to see how people thought, which is the most important. How are we thinking? Not always the right answer. And so I sat back there and was able to do this informal assessment because these are 6th graders who I taught math to last year. So it was really a cool way to see their thinking. And then again, gets the discussions going. And what's really cool is now we've done unit rates and all of this, and this Jamboard is saved. So we could really bring this back up and say, now what do you know? What can we talk about? What have you learned in the past month? So that was pretty cool. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so I'm teaching in person in Wrangell, but we have students who can opt to do virtual, and I'm teaching a response to intervention class. And that is really challenging because we're working on stuff that's really hard. One thing hard for them. So one thing is editing. And I have kids at home, and it's like, so I can put the passage we're editing on Jamboard so the kids at home can see it, and my students in the class can have it on paper, or we can just do that. And guess what? They don't really like to do much in that class, but they love to go up on the board and mess with the pens and write on this. Another thing that's really great is Among Us as a new thing, I guess, but I got this. This is not mine. Someone else made this online. I used it, and guess what? They were suddenly so excited in math to do this warm-up activity. And one thing that's really important is I got this Jamboard, and then I duplicated it 7 times, partnered them up by putting a sticky note on, like, Madeline, you're with so-and-so. And they quickly came up with their answers. And then I went through each Jamboard as a class, and then we're ready to start math. And just the fact that this is among us got them going. I could have probably asked them anything. So warm-up activities are really fun. And the last thing I'll say about that is smart boards are wonderful, dinosaurs or whatever you might think about them. But if you are in person and you have your child coming up to write, or your student on the board, think of all the germs. I mean, even when COVID leaves, I feel like our teaching is going to be different. So now with Jamboard, they can do the same thing they did on the smart board, see it all on the computer, see it on the smart board, but not have to be touching the same smart board, not getting out of their desk. And they love, in my class, I'm like, okay, if you showed your answer on Jamboard, you get to pick the next kid, and they're all about it. And one more thing is they hold each other accountable. If you abuse a pen in my class, you're going to get busted by all your peers because no one wants that. So it's like awesome. Anyways, one more slide and then I'm done. Okay, so because I'm a newbie, I just want to remind you that that's okay. Wakelet is one of my favorite things ever, and there's so many collections. So if you click on both of these, there is a link to both those Wakelet collections. I'm not a lover of Facebook, but let me tell you, this is a great Facebook group. Teachers using Jamboards, and there's lots of ideas. There's lots on YouTube. This person I found had a blog, so there was tons of ideas, and I'm following hashtag Jamboard on Instagram. It's a real thing. So all of those ideas are out there, and so no one should be lost. And I'm done.
All right. This was perfect to follow Laura, because I was the same way. I'm like, yeah, let's do Jamboard, not knowing that. Yeah. So hey, I'm up for anything, and I am a librarian, and so I get to do fun stuff. If I want to do serious stuff, I can, but my favorite thing to do is fun stuff. So I thought, how can I make it in a fun way? Well, all those things that you ever did on grid paper, you can now do in a Jamboard. And so if, teachers have 1,000 things that they've done in the past on grid paper. Now they can do it interactively. So you can see the first thing, if you wanted to make it more, assignment-y, the kid creates their design. So I did my name, and then they plot the points, and then they add the axes. I think that's what you call them. Like, I know it's the X and Y, but do you call them axes? I don't know. And then, you identify what those points are, and then, don't leave them in order, because then it kind of leads them to know exactly what you want to leave some suspense. So then you kind of resort the points, and then you delete your design. And then my thought was, one kid could give it to another kid, and they'd have to figure out the code. Like, what's the secret code that they drew a picture? You know how you got it when you had to add, and then you got a number, and then you plot the point. I just thought this was cool. Or you can just give them grid paper to draw for fun. You bubble map, or you play that little game where I couldn't remember the name of the game. You draw a line, and then you draw a line, and then draw a line. If you close it, what's the name of that game? Anyway, I do fun things. I have library lunch. And so I'm going to try this at library lunch, because I didn't have kids today because we have parent conferences. I'm like, darn, I can't even try my idea that I found last night. So anyway, secret codes, grid paper, whatever you can do with grid paper. You could give everybody a piece of grid paper and put them on a bunch of different, like how Laura said, put them on a bunch of different grid board, put the sticky notes, and then whatever, fun, learning, whatever. I just thought the grid board was a cool idea. So fun, the end.
All right, so this one's me. So I'm Nikki Fisher. I teach at LAD in Fairbanks. I'm actually right behind Tana, and I'm down the street from Allison. So very small world. So I teach a 4th and 5th grade class, and I teach science and writing, and then I teach 5th grade math. So I, like everybody else before me, I use it for everything. So I let my kids into my Google Meets, because we are virtual right now. I let them in, 6 or 8 minutes early some days when I have an activity like this to do. So this one here, I found like an I Spy thing on a website online, and I just screenshot it. And my kids know how to use the tools on there, like the highlighters and things. So, I put a little note, make sure you use a highlighter to do this, and just, they come in, they grab the link to the Jamboard. They all get edit access, and they can come in and just do the I Spy if they want, or they can just sit and stare at each other awkwardly. The other one that you can kind of see, I sort of dropped down the top box there so you can see each board. What I did here is about 2 weeks ago, we were starting properties of multiplication and math. And this was just kind of to see what they knew, if they could identify it. And so they just went to each slide and tried to identify by just putting the name of the property on a Post-it note and putting it next to the problem. Next slide. And then I do a lot of sort activities for my kids. We were just doing a recent Earth spheres unit. And so this one I made a while back, but I actually didn't get to use it until a couple weeks ago. And this was really fun for them because I just we brain dumped a whole bunch of words that related to all of the spheres. So, animals and lakes and glaciers and all of these things, oxygen and all that. So everything that we came up with as a group, I took those words, I put it on Post-it notes. I gave everybody their own copy, and they made a sort of which goes into which sphere. And then just some other ideas that I've used it for. So sorting details for a narrative. Right now we're doing personal narratives, and my kids really rush to get to the end of it. And so they skip a lot of details. And so their pacing is totally off. And teaching writing is really, really hard. So it's important for them to, really remember all of the details that they need to include in their story. So I've had them stop and just, sort out again, another brain dump, right, on Post-it notes. This is what I remember about this moment in time. And then they can sort it. They can make the, they can make the detail a big Post-it note as a reminder, okay, this is something that I want to linger on and really talk about. Or they can make it really small so that when they go back to it, they can remember maybe it's worth mentioning in my story, but maybe I don't need to talk a lot about it. So teaching story pacing. So I use it for showing math problems and modeling. Occasionally I do a how's your day check-in. And exit tickets, just show me what what have you learned today. Really, it's hard to come up with things kind of on the spot. But like Laura was saying a few minutes ago, you can do it on the fly. When you think of something to do, Jamboard is it. This is the tool to be using for sure.
All right, so on these last two slides, we'll reshare the bit.ly, but like Nikki and Laura said, Jamboard can be used really well on the fly without all of the frills. But if you're someone who really likes seeing all of these really creative and in-depth Jamboards, and you're I want to use that, but I don't know how to make that, all of these resources on here, if you click on them, especially on this second page, a lot of them have templates where you can just go in and make a copy, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel, but just grab what other people have created, adjust it for your classroom, and move on. So I really strongly suggest you guys come in here and click on all these different links of different ways that you guys can use Jamboard on top of the things that we've talked about today. So we're going to go ahead and move into some questions. Does anybody have any questions about Jamboard or how you use it? I know something that's come up in a previous meeting is your students are in the Jamboard and they are done, and it seems like they go crazy with the sticky notes, moving them around, and the laser pointer. How do you guys prevent that from happening?
So you can actually give them a limited access. So when you're sharing with somebody, you can, I don't want to say time. What am I trying to say, Allison? Help me out here.
Yeah, you're trying to say limited access,
time. Yeah, basically. So it's not you can't just choose I'm going to give them 5 minutes of access. You can give them temporary access and then kind of remove it at the end. And I think that's exactly what the language says is temporary access. So I don't use it. I just, if I give my kids edit access, and we're done with it, and it's something that I want to, print to PDF and then kind of post to their resources so they can use it as a study guide or something, then I print like when we're done. But if they go back in and change it, I mean, whatever. I'm not. I don't go back in and try to change access for them.
Yeah, I think the times that I turn off access is if I have everybody in one jam at the same time, is when I will turn, like with one child, I don't really worry about the editing, but if I have everybody in there, I always count down to view only, and I just go in and I change it with view only. And it's something worthwhile to say is that if you share it in a Google Meet with the Meet integration, it automatically will share that jam with all the kids in your class, which I don't actually like, because if I want to go in and turn everybody off, it actually is more work. So I just use the link. I just post the link to the Jamboard into the chat in Google Meet, and they click on it, and I have it already set to anybody with a link can edit, and then I just turn it off. But it just depends. Like, I've had small groups where I really would love them to go back and look at it again, and maybe change some things. So that's what makes it so great, is that you can kind of choose how you want kids to access it.
So you guys touched on Bill's question a little bit, but to elaborate on that, so we can use Jamboard on Meet. How would you guys use it differently if you were in the classroom compared to how you use it virtually?
Well, I think what Laura said is the way to go. I mean,
Fix your microphone, Allison.
Fix it. Oh, sorry. Thanks. I had it up so I get to take a drink. I think the way Laura said is the way to use it is that you share it with your kids, and then in class, yeah, thanks. And then in class, kids want to share what they've done, you can put it up on the projector. So I would, for me, if I was using it in person, I would do everything through Classroom, right? So each kid gets a copy of that jam, and then you can share from the folder or from Classroom. That's just the way I would use it.
I was going to add, it is a funny story now, but like in my first week, because we have both dual, like kids at home. So one of the students at home was messing with the Jamboard behind me. And I was like, I know I'm funny, but I'm not that funny. No, I'm just kidding. But I was like, what is going on? And then they point, and I was like, you got to be kidding me. But the thing is, I feel like all that stuff has to happen one time. Like, someone's got to be the bozo that writes like, yo mama, or something really stupid on there. Just like get it out. And then it seems to be fine. And honestly, all of that shows their excitement for the tool.
Yeah, and so that's the other thing too that can be a downfall, is like when you give everybody edit access, you're like pre-teaching, don't touch anything, because this is exactly what you can use, and I strictly like, you may use this and or this, nothing else, because if you clear the board and you ruin everybody's work, like, you're done, right? And so early on in the year, that happened once with one of my younger boys who, I just love him to pieces, but yeah, he was that guy that cleared everybody's work off the board, and it's never happened since. So yeah, things like that do happen. But that's all in your management and how you teach your kids how you want it to be used. But nobody ever wants to be that guy that ruins everybody else's work. So that was, we were done with the session and we kind of laughed about it. It wasn't anything to be saved anyway, but I made sure to be like, yo, this is why we don't mess with things, right?
Yeah, it's all about, building a culture, for sure.
And that builds on a conversation we've had previously. Allison mentioned how usually we make a big deal over Digital Citizenship Week, but we are living like Digital Citizenship Year right now. What do you guys feel like with Jamboard, or really with any Google tool, where you've had a moment where your students just really got, okay, we shouldn't post this because, what was kind of that real life teaching moment you guys had?
We had a conversation in class about cameras, and And it came up one morning that I said something about, oh, your avatars look super round this morning. And they were all laughing. And I was just like, what do you guys feel? I mean, do you feel like it's okay that we don't have our cameras on? And so there was a conversation about, well, sometimes we don't need to see what is in other people's houses. And we talked about privacy, and it's just this conversation that I really wasn't even planning on talking about. But the privacy thing, I think, is huge right now. That I think we don't realize how much power we have putting devices in kids' homes. And I can only imagine, I mean, I am a parent, but as a parent who's not in education, how intimidating that can be, that you have a child now in your home with a camera that goes out to 30 other homes, and that can be difficult. So it's A-okay in my world for you to have your camera off 100% of the time. I do talk to my students one-on-one every week for 15 minutes, and most of them turn them on then, because it's just me. But that's a great lesson that I didn't even know we were going to talk about, but it came up, and it's good.
Yeah, and that came up with parent-teacher conferences today. I had two parents that were like, she doesn't turn her camera, like, you don't mind? And it's like, why? No, I don't mind. We don't need to see in your house, so but for me, for my class, for little like fourth and fifties, we have the Google chat going because they can reach me at all hours of every single day. And I swear to you, 10:30 on the other night, sometime this past weekend, I had a kid message me and I was like, you're doing schoolwork at 10:30. And she's like, yeah, I know, I'm sorry. I'm like, well, no, don't apologize to me. Like, that's why I opened the chat. I will help you anytime. Like, you know what I mean? But sometimes kids will go into the chat and they're like, hey, what's up? How's it going? Blah, blah, blah. And then I have other kids going, this is supposed to be just for schoolwork. You know what I mean? So like they try to like control the chat, and it's funny, but they just need to talk. But we've got one that really tries to control who says what in the chat room.
Well, this is kind of off topic from Jamboard, but I just want to say that I think one thing that's going to come out of this is some of the students are going to have that confidence to talk to adults. Because I had the 5th grade class, last year, and now they're my 6th grade students. And so the other middle school teachers are like, they're emailing you, they're calling you, they're FaceTiming you, and like, they're kind of like worried about the boundaries. And I'm like, I spent 2 months telling them that there will be no excuse for them not to communicate and advocate for themselves. Like, I pushed that so hard in the spring, and now I have this class that does not hesitate to contact me for anything. And I'm like, that's huge. I hated asking adults for help. I still hate asking adults for help. So I think we're going to have a bunch of students that now know how to communicate with their teachers in lots of different ways. So that's like one of the positive, doing it correctly as a good digital citizen, but also a benefit of COVID.
Yeah. But I think that's the thing that, I mean, for me personally, if my kids can walk away with self-advocacy skills and like know what they need and be able to ask for it, then I have done my job above any standard whatsoever, because that's what I want for my kids, is for them to be able to say to their teacher, hey, this is what I need, instead of them going, Mom, can you go ask my teacher? So yeah, hands down, I will answer my phone anytime. So, and that's why I did it. I didn't open up the chat so I could only be available until 2:30 every day. You know what I mean? That's so.
Yeah, they can participate by voice. I mean, my kids, a lot of them just are talking. They talk all the time. It's just, we don't need to see you, but we can still hear you. And one of my biggest things is always student voice and amplifying that. And I love I know they love how they can talk and there's not someone talking over them. And there's a lot of noise that happens, figuratively in the classroom as well. And it's nice to just have that place for them to just speak. It's kind of nice.
Well, I don't want to cut the conversation short, but it is 8 o'clock, so it is about time to end. But the great thing with GEG Alaska is that we can keep the conversation going. We do a monthly meeting where it's the same format kind of as today, where it starts with a professional development, ends with kind of a group discussion to talk about whatever comes up. It's an hour, and it's going to be on November 24th. So if you're interested, please feel free to sign up. And then just want to show you guys, great way to connect with us. We are available on lots of social media platforms. We have a website and an email address. So if you have any questions or want to get connected with us in any way, feel free to reach us at any of those things. And then
Don't wait for these things, like post to the group and stuff. Like if you saw what I posted to the group today, it's probably not even like news to anybody else. I think it's cool. You know what I mean? And I did something with Keep and Docs and my mouse pen. I thought it was neat. Maybe you won't, but maybe you have some kind of cool tip that's working for you that, isn't like news today. You know what I mean? But if it's working for you, I love getting hints from other people.
Totally.
Because I only know what I know. I get all of my good ideas from other people. Do you know what I mean? Like really, and I just kind of remix it and make it mine. And I think that's how we create these really rich communities, is making what we all do, making it fit for us in our classrooms. So please post to the group or to the Facebook, just whatever you're doing, because I want to steal your idea, basically.
Oh, I totally agree with that. I was just going to say, my former principal who pushed me to do things that he thought were cool, that I'm like, of course. He said, things that are obvious to you are not obvious to everybody else. And so you have to share what you know, because if you don't, then you're not helping the other person that needs to know what seems obvious to you. So exactly, Nikki, that's exactly.
And it's I have to catch myself, because sometimes I'll see people share something and I'm like, well, like what? How do people not know? But then I do something and I'm like, wait a minute, this is not new. How did I not know? You know what I mean? So yes, please post your ideas, because we all can, take some value from it for sure.
And one more thing I was going to say is that I'm like doing things that for science right now, learned 5 years ago. And it's been on my list. So sometimes you see something, you're like, yep, I'm going to do that later. So it's nice to have it posted, because you can go back and find it.
So all these posts everybody's talking about, go to our website, join our Google group, join our Facebook page, take an idea, leave an idea. We'll be presenting at ASTE, so hopefully we will see you guys there as well with the ASTE plug on the ASTE event. Bill's given us the thumbs up. If you want to stay and chat, feel free, but it is 8:02, so we are past our mark. So thank you guys so much for coming, and hopefully we will see you at a GEG Alaska event or on our group soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for being here. See you later.